Hi everyone. In a previous video, I talked about how there's a serious problem with 4.5 million midfielders in FPL this season as a result of the multiple price changes that we've seen across the different price tiers. But as I was in the process of updating my FPL draft, it actually dawned upon me that we also have a serious problem with the 4.5 defenders in FPL. And it actually begs the question that is this the end of the 4.5 million defender in FPL? And the reason I actually asked that question is that because of the significant reductions in price that we've seen across the board, especially in defense, the reality is that there actually aren't that many options when it comes to 4.5 defenders. And the proof is ultimately in the pudding when it comes to the actual players that have been picked in the draft so far. And I'll show this now actually. So if I select a replacement for that slot there, and if I sort by 4.5 defenders, and I show team selected by, you'll see that only of the 4.5 million defenders, you've got, okay, good Botman at 30%, Mings at 16%, and then you've got Henry at 6% there as well. Of the 106 defenders in Fantasy Premier League this season that are priced at 4.5 million, only 3 of them are above 5%. Now, in seasons gone by, you would have had far more defenders who were 4.5 million, and ultimately you would have looked at rotating pairs, for example. So one thing that you may have actually noticed on your timelines is that there aren't that many rotating pair options, because the reality is you've got Gabriel, you've got Estupinan. Are you seriously going to rotate them for a 4.5 or a 4.0 defender? Of course you're not. Dare I say it, you'd want to play them for almost all the fixtures that are available, especially when they've got a good run of opening games as well. So I think the problem that we have at hand is basically that we're going to stack up ultimately with our defenders in FPL. Formation wise, sure, you might go for a 3 at the back, 4 at the back, certainly not 5 at the back. But there's just no room for 4.5 million playing defenders. And I say that because you've got 4.0 playing defenders. You've got Bell, you've got Bayer, you've got Bulldog. Now, when you have them, why would you want a 4.5 million defender? That is the situation that you're in right now. So I just can't see the justification or the case to have one right now. And like I've said, I'm in the process of looking to update my draft, and not once have I been keen on one. I mean, the only one who I feel offers exceptional value just because his counterpart in the team, Trippier, is 6.5 million, is Botman. When you've got a £2 million price difference between those two defenders and you want a Newcastle defender, you're going to gravitate towards Botman ultimately. So Newcastle, of course, have those tricky run of opening games as well. So just to remind us all, Villa in the first match, Man City and Liverpool. So you certainly won't be starting Botman in those opening games. And then you've got, I mentioned Brentford as well with Henry at 4.5 million. I'll just bring his details up here as well. You've got Spurs in that first game, Fulham, Palace. Yeah, possibly, you consider him beyond the Spurs game, but then you'd be looking for a rotating pair there. But then I ask that question again. If you've got Gabriel and Estupinan for 500,000 more, and then you've got the newly promoted players who are 4.0 defenders, would you seriously consider a 4.5 in your team? Can the case be made? And the reality is that it just can't. That's the conundrum that I have at this moment in time. I mean, in seasons gone by, I've done those rotating pair tables, and the reality is the rotating pairs often expire fairly early on when you get form coming to the fore, and then you realize, oh, actually, that 4.5 who looked good in pre-season isn't great at all. So, I mean, look, just for the argument of this video, let's actually go all the way down and look at those 4.5 defenders. Like I said, there's 106 of them. So can I make a justification for any of them? So, and especially when, let me just quantify it. You've got 4.0 playing newly promoted team defender. Some of them are 4.5, but then you can get a Gabriel who plays in the Champions League this season. You've got a Stupinan who will play in, I believe, the Europa League this season. So you're willing to pay the extra $500,000 for a quality upgrade. That's the difference. And because that is the difference, you'll get your 5.0 defenders, you'll get your 4.0 defenders, and that'll be that. So look, Holding, nope. Kiwior, nope. Tierney, nope. Tomiyasu, nope. You got like what, Cash perhaps. You've got the new Villa defender as well, Torres, possibly Luca Digne, bit of a troll in seasons gone by. Yeah, I mean, the only teams that really spring to mind are possibly investment in the Villa defence when the Villa fixtures improve perhaps, and then Newcastle United as well, possibly when their fixtures improve. That's really it. Of the 106 defenders, you'd literally narrow it down to what? 4 or 5 defenders from the whole lot. Bournemouth, no way, none of them whatsoever. The Bournemouth ones, some of them should have been 4.0 if I'm being perfectly frank with you. Brentford, yeah, Rico Henry, I get the logic behind that. Pinnock, we saw what he did last year as well. Zanka, 4.5, I don't think so. Veltman and Webster, rotation risk at 4.5, you'd get a Stupinan in. O'Shea, Roberts, Vitinho should be 4.0. Chelsea ones, it's too early to say. So, early on, what I've just said, it's the Villa defenders right now, 3 or 4 of them. Colwill could be an interesting option for Chelsea if he's still there and if he starts. Fofana as well, potentially under Pochettino, but like they would be behind the Villa and Newcastle assets. Yeah, Anderson, I see the logic behind him, and Guehi for Palace, possibly when they have a good run of fixtures. But then if we remind ourselves of Crystal Palace's opening games, got Arsenal in that opening match. Okay, got the 2 newly promoted teams, Sheffield, well, not 2 newly, we've got Sheffield United opening match, newly promoted, Brentford away, still tricky games nonetheless. Wolves, I would say, you have to wait until game week 4, really, when you could say that Palace have a reasonable home game. And then you've got Fulham, game week 6, far from easy. Forest, like just from Palace alone, what game week 4 and game week 8, where you'd possibly consider starting a Palace defender. So not many options there from the onset. I know that Everton have a good run of opening games, but we saw how they struggled last season. A lot of people have gone for Pickford in goal, and I think in all likelihood they'll probably go for Pickford as their 4.5 goalie than a Everton defender. I can't really make a case for any of them. Yeah, they're 4.5, and they shouldn't be any higher. Fulham, you'd probably go for Leno ultimately, wouldn't you? With the options available in their defence, there's no one that's specifically outstanding. Yeah, Everton opening match, got the red block fixtures as well. Again, get the $500,000, you'd get Gabriel, you get a Stupinan in, so no one from there. Yeah, Gomez, Tsimikas, no way for Liverpool. Yeah, none of the Luton 4.5s when you can get Bell at 4.0. Rico Lewis at Man City, yeah, rotation risk. And you've got the United defenders there. I wouldn't get any of them. Telles, nope. Lindelof, Maguire, Malacia, nope. None of them. Then on you got Wan-Bissaka, possibly. I had him at the end of the season, but he's a bit of a rotation risk as well. And for a Champions League team, that is exceptional value. If he's starting and I haven't got enough for Luke Shaw, then Wan-Bissaka could be an option perhaps, but he's a rotation risk right now. couldn't really make a case for him at the moment. And like I've said, I'd rather just pay the extra half mil. I'd rather just get Luke Shaw from the onset if I had the funds. Here we are. So the Newcastle defenders, the only one I'd get here is Botman. You'd expect him to start regularly. 2 million difference from Trippier. And is there a case that will Trippier still be on all the set pieces this season when you've got some of the new players who could take them as well? That could impact his set piece potential. You know, you'd get Botman. When Newcastle have good run of games and I want to unlock funds, I'd go to Botman, absolutely. And his ownership right now, I think it's like, what, 30% did we see? It was very high from the onset. Possibly make a case for him from the 4.5s. None of the Forest ones, I'm not going to even read them out. There's quite a few of them. Look at that. Then you've got Sheffield United. Sadly, there's no Lundstrom, but you have got Baldock. You'd get him at 4.0 if you couldn't get Bell, if you didn't want Bell. And then the Spurs ones, yeah, none of the Spurs 4.5s. The only one I'd consider from Spurs would be Porro, but he's 5.0. So I'd rather pay the extra $500,000 for Porro than any of these Spurs defenders. And then you've got West Ham, you've got Aguerd, no thank you. Just not happy with how West Ham have been defensively of late. Of course, Soufal Cresswell, who from seasons gone by was an absolute like fantasy magnet. Like just to show you, got 11 assists during the 2020-21 season, which was quite exceptional. And he's had a price tag that's been 5 million, 5.5. I think he's almost been 6 million, almost at one point as well. But yeah, we just wouldn't consider Cresswell at all. None of the West Ham defenders. Zuma 4.5. Yeah, possibly no. Just none of the West Ham defenders. You've got Wolves. Well, Bueno's 4.5 now. I thought it'd be 4.0 for some reason. Yeah, possibly Kilman, but just not sure with Wolves. And if I'm not mistaken, their opening run of games are very difficult. So you've got United in the first game, Brighton, and then further down the line you've got Luton as well. So United, Brighton, Luton, Liverpool, sorry, in those first 5 games, no thank you, wouldn't get them. So yeah, all got the and then here we are at the 4.0s now. So literally from those defenders that we've seen, yeah, I can make a case possibly for Botman, possibly for Rico Henry, and the Aston Villa defenders. I think when Aston Villa's fixtures certainly do improve, I would possibly consider a Villa defender. I think Torres will certainly strengthen the Aston Villa back line for sure. But it just brings me back to my original question, which I'll bring up there. Is this the end of the 4.5 defender in FPL? And I would say that if the 5.0 defenders hit the ground running, and if the 4.0 starters who we expect to start do start, then it's going to really like squeeze the 4.5s out. And I'll repeat that again. 106 defenders that are 4.5 million, and only 3 of them, that was, I believe, Botman, Mings, and Rico Henry, that have an ownership of 5% or more. And I haven't got the stats from previous seasons, but I'm pretty certain it was much higher than that. But this is one of the consequences of FPL, not to say tampering, but FPL reducing some of those players that should have been 6 million, but were 5.5. Some of the 5.5s that ultimately became 5.0s. And yeah, it's good to see like 2 of those 4.5s being like highly owned, but that's it. There's literally no one else. And I think formation wise as well, I've seen a lot of teams being forced into a 4-5-1 and a 3-5-2 as well. You don't see many 4.5s in those teams. You really don't. The 4-5-1s have gone for a minimum 5.0 starting defender, and then their sub defender is a 4.0, and then the 3-5-2s as well. But okay, they might have one 4.5, and Could you get a rotating pair with one of the 4.5s? I think there is one rotating pair that I saw on my timeline earlier today. But this is something that needs to be talked about. We've talked about I didn't really call it the end of the 4.5 midfielder, but effectively it was, unless some of those 4.5s that we said were potential solutions start matches. But from the onset, it seems like there are no 4.5 starting midfielders. In the case of the 4.5 defenders, yes, there are a lot that are likely to start, but because of the pricing, not many are going to own them. It just doesn't add up. And no doubt, if Villa do start well, people will then possibly upgrade a Bell to a Cash, or go from an Estupinan, possibly when their fixtures change, to a Torres. You can see that happening. But this is something that needs to be really factored in. And I remember like 2 seasons ago, I distinctly recall having Connor Cody and Ben White on my bench when they were 4.5 million. And like, I just had them because there weren't any playing 4.0s, and there weren't many 5.0s from like Champions League teams I could just pick out from the transfer basket. So that's where we're at. And I think like more content creators might also cotton onto this, as they cotton onto the fact that there aren't any 4.0, 4.5 starting midfielders. So, if you see someone doing a video where it's the best 4.5 defenders in FPL this season, newsflash, there aren't any, apart from the handful. We could literally count them on the palm of your hand, like that one Brentford defender, 2 Villa defenders, Botman, and then one other. That's literally it. And even then, I would like to hear the justification and reasoning from the start of the season to go for them rather than the 5.0s that we mentioned. And there we have it. So is this the end of the 4.5 defender in Fantasy Premier League 23-24? I'm not going to write the obituary right now, but it'll be interesting to see how those 5.0 defenders start compared to the 4.5 defenders. And it just, like, on a value basis, I'll repeat this again. Why on earth would you get a 4.5 newly promoted defender or someone who just survived relegation when you can get the extra 500,000 for someone who's playing in the Champions League, who almost won the Premier League last season, or who did win the Premier League last season in the form of Ake or Akanji? You can get them. And there we have it. So look, let me know in the comments below what you think. For those that have watched live, and for those that are watching on playback, if you can like, share, and subscribe, that will be greatly appreciated. This is a video that I wasn't actually planning to do. It's just a tweet that I put out earlier tonight when it dawned upon me that this is a serious problem in FPL. It's a I don't want to call it a problem. It's an anomaly, and because so few managers across the board don't own the 4.5s, you question, like, have they been overpriced? And I think that the reality is that a lot of those 4.5, seeing as we've cut the prices of the 5.5s and the 5.0s, a lot of those 4.5s should have been 4.0 defenders. That's the reality. Anyway, we'll leave it at that, and all the best. Thank you. Bye.